Are you a future fit leader who champions digitalization across your organization? If not, you're not alone. For many years, I was completely tech averse. I see it every day in the companies I work with, but it's okay. In today's session, Ryan and I will share some personal insights on how we were able to embrace digitalization to significantly improve our productivity. I'm Zane Inglis. Welcome into Future Fit Leaders.
And I'm Ryan Sheppard, Japan headhunter and author of Sell Yourself Like a CEO. And today's topic, digitally savvy, is one that gets me out of bed every morning because the world is changing so fast. And if we're not on top of this, then the fact is that if we're not digitally savvy, our leadership shelf life is shrinking. So, Zane, what does this topic mean to you?
Man, it's really important for me. For so many years, I considered myself technologically challenged. I blamed my dyslexia. I was the guy who would always ask people to come in and set up my internet on my new computer, things like that. It was all really complicated for me, but when ChatGPT beta was launched, the day after it went public, a friend of mine suggested I jump on there and help use it to help improve my writing, because being dyslexic, I struggle to see my own typos. My grammar's terrible. And from that day, I decided I'm not going to be the guy who makes up excuses. I thought I'm going to be the guy who jumps in and champions this and leads the way. And the way it's improved the way I do business over the past 3.5 years is unbelievable. So it's something I'm really, really passionate about. And every day I see leaders across various businesses start to embrace not just AI, but the various tools that we have available to us today that make life so much easier. So man, it's been transformational for me. What about you?
Yeah, I've always wanted to be on the cutting edge of digital, though I've never really considered myself on the cutting edge in digital until last year. I realized seeing is believing. And when I saw some of these tools in action, for example, like an interview tool that can sit in on an interview and it summarizes that interview with the mindset of a recruiter. And it can even tailor the output template to whatever format fits into your company or your team's process and the questions you're asking to standardize and streamline, which as a headhunter makes presenting candidates very easy. So when I saw that, I thought, wow, there's so much potential here, because you know what? The risk of AI is that we fall asleep at the wheel. And when we're in a business that involves humans and feelings and complexities, we can't afford to do that. But the wonderful thing is, if we approach it in the right way and we see this technology as being able to help us be more human, right? So instead of kind of being half there taking notes in a meeting, I'm letting AI do that, and I'm looking in your eyes and I'm listening to what you're really saying. It enables us to be more human. So if we approach technology with this mindset and this principle, then we can make ourselves as leaders even more dispensable in a world where anyone whose performance cannot be measured is at risk of being terminated and let go. So we can all start today by thinking, one, how can we measure what we're doing? And even if you're not sure how to apply that in a business context yet, a really easy way to do this is tracking fitness, whether that's a Fitbit to measure number of steps each day to hit that goal, to know, maybe you're at like 9,500 just before you go to bed. A quick walk around the house can fill in the gap, but it's those little tweaks and nudges that help us to steer our future trajectory to become the person that we really want to be. And the budget, so I can track what I'm spending, credit card payments going out, income coming in, etc. And allows me to stay on top, because future fit leaders, they know where they're going, they know their numbers, and technology empowers us to be able to do that in all areas of life and business.
Yeah, I think one of the key points I took out of that is it can help you eliminate ambiguity. I think as humans, we naturally like things to be a little bit ambiguous because it gives us a little bit of an excuse or a bit of freedom to run away from the things we know that we should be delivering. And in business, too much ambiguity is a real risk. So they can help us eliminate that in a pretty efficient way. I think for me, the biggest thing for me was being in a small company. I can't afford to employ someone to check all of my work. And, it's very time consuming to go over and over things to try and find little typos that could be the point of difference to a potential client, but having a system that can check those. But realizing that AI as an example is a great supplementary tool It's like an super assistant, but it's not something we should completely trust. So that balance between the human aspect of it and using the AI to support us, not do everything for us, is important. And another thing I think we need to realize is that AI is scary. It's going to eliminate a lot of jobs, and potentially coaching and consulting is one that people think an AI bot can do the same thing I do. I don't think for the next few years anyway, it'll have the same level of empathy and it will ask the same kind of questions or unprompted questions that I can ask as a human. But I'm mindful that my value will change. So I've actually embraced this to the point where I've engaged with a world leading leader in AI and big data management as a partner to add value to my projects, where I'm usually working with the people and more analog processes. Now I can provide them with digital solutions rather than ignoring it and trying to hide from it and fearing that it's going to take over my business. So I think that's really important for leaders. Those who ignore the potential of technology are the ones who run the biggest risk of it replacing them.
Absolutely. Like I said at the beginning of this podcast today, that as leaders, if we're not continuously improving how we're digitally savvy, our leadership shelf life is shortening, regardless of our age. And this is where the principle adapt or die really plays true today, because if we're not continuously learning how to be digitally savvy in ways that relate to our goals and values and priorities, etc., of course, it's going to be different for everyone. And there's way too many apps out there to know all of them. So it really begins with how it can help you, what your goals are, and then finding the right tools that relate to that. But a client asked me the other day, Ryan, I'm looking for a head of digital, but I just can't find someone who's done what I need them to do. And the fact is, the digital talent pool is still immature. It's still a very developing talent pool. And ones that are really digitally savvy and combine the technical skills with the true marketer's mindset, often they're running their own agencies and building sales funnels and scaling those and coaching other people to make millions of dollars as well. So it's important to remember that regardless of being an independent consultant or an employee, continuous improvement. And this is one of those things where courses and programs and communities can be really valuable. For me, for example, I've taken 2 digital marketing courses. One is more about the marketing customer avatars, understanding their pain points, and building a sales funnel. It gave me the blueprint to do that, messaging, the formulas, etc., so that when I look at social media now, I can see what they're doing through a totally different lens. And that is why I chose to self-publish the book Sell Yourself Like a CEO, because I thought, wait a second, I don't need to rely on a publisher anymore to do this. I just need to find the right ideas and value that can be spread organically. And once tapping into that nerve, then scale through ad spend. That's the potential. But going back to this example with the client, my advice to him was, ask your candidates, what are you doing to develop your digital savvy? What are you doing to develop your digital skills and tools and stay on the cutting edge? Because it's changing so fast that if we're not tuned in to some sort of community or program, we're going to get left behind.
Yeah, it's funny listening to you talk about that. One of the main things I wanted to share is how I'm using ChatGPT within the way I run my business, develop my content, and so forth. But it just sort of triggered the example of what we're doing here today. For many years, I wanted for some reason to do podcasts and YouTube. And the biggest barrier to me doing that was the technology. I never thought that I had the ability to run the podcast myself. And I was afraid to try and learn how, but I kind of forced myself around 2.5 years ago to just embrace it and try. I started out by pointing the camera at my face on my phone. Didn't have a mic or anything. I couldn't even see the screen and just talked from woe to go. I didn't edit it. I just posted it as it was. And then I slowly started to look at different ways to editing out the ums and the ahs and the mistakes. Then I realized that, these mics make a difference. Now, today, we're using a system called Riverside that some people who watch podcasts may not be aware of. It's like Skype, but it actually records both Ryan and I in real time on our own computers and then uploads it. So even if we have bandwidth problems with our internet, that when I'm looking at Ryan, he may look fuzzy. At the end of the day, the AI puts it together perfectly synced and perfectly crystal clear in HD. So these tools are so much easier to use now. And if you can't comprehend where to start, just go to YouTube and put in the question that's in your mind, and someone will be explaining it in a way that you can empathize with. So social media is one really interesting example how I've embraced this. And the other one I really wanted to share is the power of ChatGPT or other AI tools, and a few limitations that I found. Like Ryan, I've always wanted to write a book, but I've never thought I could do that, and I have to pay someone to do it. So I'm really curious to learn how he did that. But in my case, it was around the time I created the new website for my company, Enhance, that the first version, I initially started out with core value selling, took me around 3 to 4 months to consolidate the vision in my mind and write out all of the different content and think about which categories I needed and get it professionally checked. And when I used ChatGPT the second time, I just spoke to it for about 3 or 4 hours and told it my entire vision, and it was all over the place. But then ChatGPT was able to consolidate my thoughts into a logical concept that I could then adjust into my own terminologies. And to the point, it took me 3 weeks to make my website, all of the content for it, versus 3 months. So that was my first really positive experience. And then over the next sort of 2 or 3 years, I realized the limitations, like it starts to forget eventually. It doesn't recall what was something was in a different chat. So what I've done, a hint for anyone who's looking to really sharpen up their ChatGPT usage, is I have a master Word file, Word document, where I copy all of the chat content I have on a particular topic or a project and save it into a Word document. I also use a system called Fathom to record all my coaching conversations, my sales conversations, and then it gives me a full transcript of those discussions that I then paste into the project-specific Word file. So every time I want to create something new with ChatGPT, it completely refreshes its memory. It's able to give me content based on what I really need in my context rather than general content. So little tips like that you can pick up along the way, they save you so much time and really polish the quality of your content. And I think a lot of people for a long time were afraid of, but maybe people realize my text is AI generated. Personally, I see that as a strength. It means you're embracing technology. It's really impractical and inefficient to sit there and try and write a whole program from scratch without using it these days. So that's my story, particularly with social media and with ChatGPT. But what are some tools that you've really embraced over the past year or so since you've began your digital journey, right?
ChatGPT. But it's also taught me leadership tools along that journey. So, for example, I'll tell you a little story. I was in a sushi bar in Ginza last August with my brother. He says, "Ryan, are you using ChatGPT in paid version?" I was like, "No." He gave me his phone. He said, "Ryan, tell it to create you a picture of a monkey surfing." So I typed in, create a picture of a monkey surfing, and then boom, before I could complete my exhale, it had a picture of a monkey surfing that was pretty realistic, and I was just blown away. So I went home, signed up for ChatGPT, and then I asked it to look at my website, to look at a course I had already made, help me design a high converting sales page and a business plan that could scale up to $1 million a year in 6 months. And it says, "Great, you're really onto something here, Ryan. I'll work on this for a moment and get right back to you." 10 minutes later, "How's it going?" Just a little bit more time. "How's it going? How's it going?" 24 hours later, it still hadn't spit out the response. So what I learned from that was, just like people, we can't overload it. We need to break things down into simple, actionable things, step by step, and then articulate things from there. So what I did instead was, and this is how I wrote the book, I had already made a course that was completely pure, raw, one take from my heart, my mind into the camera, following a blueprint, a 5-module blueprint. I downloaded those transcripts, I put it into ChatGPT. I said, "Hey, I have this idea for a lead magnet. Let's call it something like this. Can you come up with the table of contents?" It looked good. I tweaked it a bit. Great. Let's make chapter 1. I didn't like what it spat out. I gave it feedback. I said, "I want it structured this way. I want to start with a story, then a principle, misconceptions, action points." So it kind of hits all those triggers of like emotion, fact, left brain, right brain, action point, etc. And that evolved over 2 months into what it is today. So what started as a lead magnet idea then just evolved and scaled into, a full 160 plus page paperback book. And ChatGPT support didn't stop at creating, generating the chapters, and me basically micromanaging ChatGPT as a ghostwriter to get exactly the output that I wanted, and my tone, vocabulary, story, style, messaging, etc., with nuances in there, like make sure any personal information I've mentioned, you're fictionalizing it so there's no legal or compliance risk at all. But then also publishing. So which platform should I use? What are the policies for exclusivity on Amazon Kindle Direct Public? How much should I price it at? What material should I choose? 50-pound paper or a 70-pound paper? Should I do an audiobook as well? What percentage of readers out there audiobook versus this and this and this? And so all those things help me to make decisions on the fly, even as I'd be shopping on the weekend with my wife and should be trying on, some clothes, and I'll be like, hey, ChatGPT, how should I And so from that, an action point anyone can take from this session today is just get started talking to ChatGPT or whichever tool you use. If you're afraid about information leaking, there is a setting you can go into to toggle off the big data opt-in. Don't quote me on that. Please do your own research and ask ChatGPT or your model how to turn off that function. And what that does, it will contain everything watertight, so it doesn't feed your information back to big data. So get started, start talking to it, tell it about yourself, tell it about your goals, bounce ideas off of it. And, going back to a leadership tool that I learned is this from this book I read called Buy Back Your Time, is the 10-80-10 principle. So 10% is to ideate, to dump some idea out there. Hey, ChatGPT, I have this idea. It's a blah, 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 blah. Then 90% is have that tool or that person or that team go away and execute on it, bring it to life. Then come back to you for that 10% honing, tweak, feedback, perfection, etc. So that's a really powerful leadership principle, I think, that we can all use, whether we are working with people or with programs, to be effective and to communicate clearly. For those that are flowing with ideas and need an outlet for that, this is just such a great way to, as those ideas come up, get them out there, get them articulated, get them documented, and you never know what might come to life. In my case, 2 months after that sushi lunch with my brother, I had a book and an endorsement for it. 2 months. I'd recorded the course already, but it just goes to show how it can open new possibilities, open those doors.
Yeah, I think a couple of key points I want to share as well that I've learned is you've got to tell ChatGPT to be objective, otherwise it'll tell you what you want to hear. Think about it from this perspective, play devil's advocate, otherwise it will always try and support and tell you what you want. Always ask it for credible sources of data that it gives you.
Yes.
The first ever LinkedIn article I wrote, I asked it for data to support my hypothesis, and it gave it to me. And it wasn't until after I published it, someone told me to actually make stuff up. So I went back and asked it, where did you get that data? I'm just an AI model. So if you ask it to search for credible
it's just a
sources
suggestion
and give you links, of Harvard Business School or McKinsey or so forth, it'll do that. And I've found that it's a really efficient way to search for data because, in the past when I've tried to find research data on Google, it takes an absolute age. The other thing is, context is really important. So give it a lot of background into what you're doing, why you're trying to do it, who you are. I literally spent, maybe 3 months way back in the beginning telling my story to ChatGPT, the free version, not realizing that it didn't recall it all. And once I clicked into a new chat, it was gone, but luckily it keeps a chat history, so I just copied it out into those master documents. That's why I started doing it. But way back to what I did as a kid and how I grew into the person I am today, and how my vision for Enhance, the change management methodology, the core value selling model for sales, how it have evolved, giving it really specific examples of things I've done that just coming on to the top of my mind. It doesn't matter if you're talking or speaking in order. Just throw it at it because it can consolidate the information. So the more context you can give it, the more relevant the responses will be. So it's a great tool, but don't trust everything it says. It's going to tell you what you want to hear. It's got to be biased. So you've got to think about making it give you objective responses. I think both you and I are good examples, what you've achieved in a year to go from not really using ChatGPT to writing and publishing a book and setting up your social media channels and your sales funnel and using it to help you qualify your candidates. For me, it helps me consider how to better support different types of personalities from a coaching perspective. It'll help me take an idea and a sort of a fragmented experience and create a completely new coaching model. So many things it can help you with, but if you don't start, nothing happens.
So another tool to take away from today, and this is straight from the book Buy Back Your Time by Dan Mortal, which really empowered me to be able to think about when I should spend money. Because perhaps a lot of, a barrier for many of us is we're bombarded each day with another $30 subscription. What should we actually use? What's right for me? Because digitally savvy leaders should have a tech stack in their business, life, a combination, but be familiar with that term, tech stack, a combination of apps and technologies, whatever they might be, devices even like a Fitbit. But what is your tech stack? What technologies are you using together that aligns with who you are and what your priorities are? And then what Buy Back Your Time teaches you is what is your buyback rate? So what that means is, let's take the value of your yearly salary. Let's say it's, for simplicity's sake, $100,000. Let's say that's your salary. We divide that by number of working hours in a year. So it's $100,000 divided by approximately 2,000 working hours in a year. That's $50 per hour. So we divide that then by 4. So your hourly rate divided by 4, that's 12.5 US dollars. So if you can get something done that would take you an hour, but you can outsource it for $12.50 or less, then that is a 4x return for you because it's freeing up your time. Even if it's done 80% is good, but guess what? That person or program might be able to do it even better than you. So that helped me look at this $30 cost for ChatGPT and think, okay, can this make me like $120 a month? And I thought of all the possibilities once I saw the picture of the monkey it created. And that answer was, yeah, there's got to be boundless upside to this. And sure enough, there has. And it's compounding every single day.
Yeah, that's great advice, really. There are so many choices out there and it's hard to choose which one's right. So I said, as I mentioned earlier, go on YouTube and look for guys who are smart and similar mindset to you, breaking down different options. Consider the cost versus return and what is an hour of your time worth and how many hours would you need to free up to justify it. Because these things add up. A decent tech stack, it adds up very quickly, particularly when you're doing things like social media on top of it. What we'll do is we'll list up these various tools and ideas, the books that we've mentioned in the in the description here. So have a look at that and you'll see things like Fathom listed, the versions of ChatGPT we're using, the book Ryan's mentioned and so forth. But we'd encourage you to reach out in the comments and share your thoughts about the ideas we've shared today, what excited you most, or maybe some tools that you're using that others might find useful, or ask us for an example of a tool that maybe you need to fix a certain problem, but you don't know what tool to go for. We'd be happy to share ideas with you.
Yeah, you know what? There's so many questions and uncertainties and mysteries that come with being digitally savvy, right? So what I'd like to ask all viewers to do, if you're watching this video right now, what's that one thing that's holding you back from leveraging technology more? And whatever springs to your mind, please drop it below in the comments because we can unpack that on a future episode.
Thanks, guys. It's been a really interesting one. It's a little bit longer than our normal one, but I think it's probably reflects how passionate both Ryan and I have become about the topic of becoming digitally savvy. And by no means do we claim to be the world's leading experts, but I think what we can do is provide you with a success vision of two guys who've really struggled with technology, particularly me. Once you try, it's amazing what's possible. And if you don't try, nothing will happen. See you next time.
Once you pop, you can't stop.
Yeah, man.
That's the thing with AI. It sucks you in.
Oh, 100%, man. All right, guys. See you next time on Future Fit Leaders.